Hello, everyone. Today we have Dr. Matthew Dickinson, a senior lecturer in mechanical engineering at the University of Central Lancashire and the founder of Viking Exos, an innovative research and consulting group dedicated to advancing exoskeleton and wearable technology. His research focuses on making wearable robotics more accessible and effective, using innovative materials and design to improve safety, comfort, and performance in demanding environments. Matt and I met through the ASTM International F48 Standards Committee meetings. And Matt, I'm super excited to learn more about your work and your vision today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, Happy New Year. And we just came off of the annual meeting of ASTM F48. I was hoping you could share a little bit about kind of a year in review on that standards effort.
It was quite the big one, to be honest. My real focus is more on the design, manufacture, and design and if you will, maintenance and disposal of exoskeletons as well. So on the ASTM side, I'm subcommittee chair for maintenance and disposal of exoskeletons, but I also work jointly on the design and manufacture. So one of the big things that we've had at the moment is classification. When you refer to an exoskeleton, there is so many different versions at the moment. It's a bit of a wild west in so many different configurations. So what we aimed to do was to introduce not a document that dictates, but a document that offers some methodology for actually giving some classification for exos, what type they are, how could you put them into a certain class, and then look at how they survive in certain environments. That was day one. Then into day two, one of the biggest things, the huge topic at the moment is safety of the exoskeleton. At the minute, there is no real certification procedures introduced for exoskeletons at all. There are against the human body, but it's not really taken into the bigger picture of the exoskeleton by itself. So me and a couple of others with an initiative to really try and iron down as to if we're going to start looking at certification, how do we do it? So I'm just for mechanical, really, more mechatronics, but in that area. And when you're referring to the whole spectrum of materials right through to laboratories and how we test these exoskeletons, we had to bring everybody together in the same room. And it was one of the biggest online calls that we'd had. So we had just under 100 people on the call inputting their points and aspects about classification process. In the end of the whole day training workshop, we're able to come away with some real key learning points. The biggest thing that is from everybody's comments throughout the day is the safety spec. So in the end of this coming month, we'll be reconvening these people back together, and we believe that we've got the first initial specification that's going to come out that we're going to be able to give to labs to start pushing that momentum for classification forwards. It was a huge event, but really good.
Oh, it's fantastic. I appreciated your comments on the classification side. You seemed to feel like this is a really hard problem, but we just need to make some decisions on classification, and maybe we'll revise those decisions later. But we can't just talk about it forever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a saying of that when you have somebody who's in the room and they're ready to introduce some level of negativity, if they kind of go, you can't do it like this doesn't work here. I often say to people, that's fine. If it shouldn't be done this way, then you remove it and tell me how it should be done. But if you don't, it's going to be this way until you can tell me a better way. Because at the minute, if we sit and we wait, this will never be done.
Yeah, your leadership on that is much appreciated. On the safety certification side, I wasn't as present on day two. How did the What do you think is motivating this surge of interest in the safety certification?
There was a member, a really prominent member in 48 who sat there throughout the meeting, and he said to me in one single, in a big, not in a hoo-ha, but more of a big statement to everybody else was, we have hundreds of standards out there. You tell me what's the most important one and what's it for? What we did is that fell beautifully into the question that we pushed to the lab. And we were saying to them, got all these standards, but what's your take? And the labs literally responded and said, if you don't give us a specification for how to test these, all the standards that you're writing are missing lots of grounding because they don't really have any good level to be pushed forwards. So Susie from Artware, she was a phenomenal person to get there because she really laid it out for us and spelt out to us, you've got to do it this way or else it just, and it let everybody sit back and go, wow, I think I know what I need to do. So I just had this huge surge of input about the types of things that are moving forwards. And it's quite exciting just because I think it pushed everybody onto that same hymn sheet, in a lack of better words.
Huh, that's great. Sounds like a turning point. So cool. With that, I wanted to zoom out a little bit. We're in the weeds on standards. Um, how did you find yourself running a subcommittee on exoskeleton standards? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I worked at the university for 17 years. I was there predominantly, I was I suppose, mature student at the time. So my background is I'd not done well in school, and then I started again a little later, and then just found this love for the drive of engineering and that push forwards. And I've always been a firm believer in public engagement, so reaching out to schools and getting youngsters to believe in themselves. One year I got involved in a project, and this young girl come up with an idea and said, why is there not special shirts that children could wear to help them move? Now this was around 11 years ago. So when it came to exos, there wasn't really anything out there. But when she said it and I first read it, I kind of thought there must be something out there, and she was right. This really pushed me down this huge rabbit hole of pediatrics, looking at support on pediatrics. So from my experience, I first started out and I built an exoskeleton, and we built this system, and I took it round all the other biomechanics people I had and said, right, what do you think? Do you think it's worth using? And at the time they said, no. They said the approach that you've done is too clumsy. It needs to be changed. But what was great with this is it taught me a huge lesson of that. If you're getting involved in prosthesis or exoskeletons, do not try and do it by yourself. You need expertise from so many different areas. So what it then did is it got me into meeting with other biomechanicists and looking at a good way to think about complementing the human body in motion. This then led to a further 9 different version prototypes of the early stage exoskeleton that we'd done. And we then realized that I personally, right now, believe that when we're talking about advanced control systems, I don't think they're ready to be put on somebody who is got any type of skeletal muscular disease, because I believe the body's so sophisticated. I think to rush onto the human body is quite dangerous. So I like to really focus more on to prevention and looking at preventative tech. So looking at supporting the workplace right through to consumer, right through to military application. Because I think the sensors are getting there, but they just need to be a little bit more advanced. But from my side now, what we did is we ended up running into this. And then a friend of mine said, have you ever been involved in ASTM? And I'd always known about the SDO themselves, but I didn't know of F48. And I joined F48, and then I was reached out by my staff manager, Nora Nimrichter. You just said, are you interested in being a subcommittee chair? I thought, you know what? Yeah, I'll give it a go. And from there, realizing that, I mean, you know what this is like, Josh. Sometimes speaking to the industrial world is a lot more approachable what it can be in an academic world, and sometimes vice versa. It can be. And some of the people on F48, some of the leading experts have been so welcoming, so helpful that it allows me to really push and thrive and can understand not the regional demographics, but the global demographics of how exoskeletons are being received and some of the work that needs to be done. So it's quite exciting, I would say.
That's great. Can you elaborate on the piece about working with student teams? Because I think this is something very unique about your
Mm.
lab and your approach. I've seen photos of the Exo Games online. I don't know much about it.
So the original Exo Games, Bill Bellat, who was the former Center of Excellence head for ASTM's Exoskeleton Center of Excellence, and Nora, they were both working on an idea of a competition, if you will, almost like a student, a formula student event. The idea of bringing students together, looking at the construction process, and I'd done competitions like this before, and I'd come across competitions like this before because the university I was at, they did a lot of formula student events. So I kind of knew the process of how
Like
that laid out.
automotive?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I did is I said to Bill and Nora, well, I can probably help you guys formulate your vision, if you will, into something, into that way forwards. So they obviously they had everything in play, but they just need to have a bit of a first place to start. At that same time, I started to realize that if you spoke to industry straight out, right? So the experience I was having on F48 by speaking to some of the leading experts about what they do, I thought to myself, if there was a way for a platform for students to speak to get that same experience, this would be a real benefit and a value. So, at the same time as helping on the Exo Games, we also launched the F48 student chapter. And this allowed for them to be like a junior version of exec from F48, which, for anybody who doesn't know, it's just the real area of everybody getting a clear vision of where the committee is moving forwards. So they do the same thing, almost like a subcommittee of it. And in that process, students have been able to deal with, say, the likes of Chris Reed, who is the chair for F48, right through to some of the subcommittee heads on there as well. And also, it allowed them to understand that if you're going to make a statement, make sure it's accurate. And they've been so good in helping them develop. So, from my side, it was a benefit because at the same time, these up and coming experts, we've been able to, if you will, mold and kind of focus them as to understanding. So I have a saying with the students that humans never do anything straight because a lot of the students I have are engineering students. So what they would have, what they would always think is that a human body is almost linear. And I said to them, you always remember that a human body never does anything straight. A knee is not simply a hinge joint. There's so much more going on. So they've been able to learn so much and understand so much more about going from mechanical right through to biological is a huge step. So that's how it all really worked from my side.
It's really interesting. I could see how learning about standards development earlier in the engineering training would be very beneficial to the students. I didn't learn about it until after graduate school.
Me too. The real approach with it is purely of that. I mean, even now, God forbid, I was at WearCon just before Christmas, and even now, a lot of universities do perceive the use of standards as some type of like a better word, it's like a whipping tool of some type of you can't do this, that, and this. But a lot of people miss of that if you use that standard, it streamlines so much work you don't have to do.
Right.
So it's like, as I used to say to my students, it's a cheat sheet to excel your innovation.
That's great framing. You mind if I borrow that?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Um, cool. As you were speaking, another thing that came to mind is your perspective as a UK based researcher and engineer. I don't know. Are there any sort of challenges, opportunities you see working on exoskeletons from a UK
Yeah.
perspective?
So, um, as you will well know, you on the US side of things, development when it comes to exoskeletons has really been US based ever since, I would argue, since the 60s. Don't get me wrong, I understand China, Japan, there's been things come out of there as well. But the real heart of development in exoskeletons has been US based. You guys, as a friend of mine says from DOT, all the mistakes that could have been made have been done. And the worst thing that the whole world could do is start to ignore these mistakes and not learn from them. So my point is in the UK, we are now just starting to see a real interest of exoskeletons arising. What we're now starting to see is we're starting to see funding being introduced, and these are military-based funds. So a lot of military-based funds at the moment are being introduced, right from the dismounted soldier right through to load carriage applications. So a huge, vast area of different types of things. But what's interesting with this is they're also asking for dual development use. And I think, and as a few of my friends do think, that they're pushing for this development to see how well it will sit in military, knowing that there's been issues in the past, but then also thinking if you're dually developing this, this could also sit within the industrial application as well. And the funds at the moment that I've seen, they've been into 20 to 30 million pounds that has been introduced as far as funds go. So it's a real interest that's going on at the moment. It's an exciting time because it is seen as a new age technology. Um, but our biggest issue is UK OSHA. So the UK OSHA is they call it HSE. Now, HSE will define in the workplace if you can wear something. They define what's protective equipment. They define material grades for clothing, that type of thing. And me and the staff manager from F48, we've been consulting with HSE to advise them about how to perceive exoskeletons going into the new year. So a paper is due to be released not too far at the moment. And I do know of some companies who now have exoskeletons in the UK and they're pushing them as much as possible. However, the next issue is when it comes to high grade exoskeletons. So let's say, for argument's sake, UK Special Forces, the military want everything to be sovereign built. So what they mean that is purely everything must be UK manufactured. Kind of like US. US is similar in a few things. So it just shows that UK can be so difficult to get moving, but we are definitely now seeing traction. So that's why it's a good time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. From my perspective, um, yeah, I guess I agree. The U.S. has been dominant in the development of exoskeletons, but it seems like in terms of the use of exoskeletons,
Yeah.
Europe is quite in a leading position.
Yeah. Yeah. In applications wise, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting as well, but the the curveball of this is the whole world is looking for a classification because it is looking for a certification procedure, and it's because when you speak to some manufacturers of exoskeletons, you ask them what standards did you use to develop this to, and they say they didn't. And you kind of go, well, if you get in front of court, if somebody says, why didn't you? You know, it's a risky business. So there is a lot of development Europe wise, but there's also a lot of companies Europe wise who don't use standards to develop them.
Yeah, I have the impression that in the UK, specifically, the health and safety approach is very rigorous. So I could see that being certainly a good thing that, there's a demand for these technologies if it could improve worker safety. But then the development and classification has to be there. Otherwise, this sale and purchase of these devices won't be authorized.
Yeah. UK typically do with an ISO quality standard.
Mm,
The ISO's quality standard, the 9000 quality standard, is a real doozy. It really asks for how did you certify your components when moving forwards? And at the moment, all you can apply for as an exoskeleton manufacturer is a document of confirmation. So you're conforming to particular standards, but that's about it at the minute. And
Similar to like a CE mark?
it's almost, yeah, very similar.
Okay.
And what we're in at the minute is, and that's why reaming back to the standards side, that's why on that certification side, it's super important we do what we do.
Yeah.
But once we get that cleared, that moving forwards, it's just going to be a wave of incoming technologies. That's how I like to see it anyway.
So, okay, so what role does your group, Viking Exos, play
Mm.
in all of this? I've been curious, is it more of a development effort or more consulting?
So at the moment, we have two particular strains. So we have an educational strain, which I will not say who, but we have a large manufacturer that we're partnering with on the educational strain. The idea is on this side, we're going to be introducing educational exoskeletons right from what is US called, we'll say US term, is K through 12. As for us, we know this as junior school and medium and middle school. So we'll be introducing exoskeletons to meet these criteria for kids to learn about what an exoskeleton is, know about the construction of it, know about how it aids the body, right through to researchers. And researchers will be able to buy a system off the shelf that they can pull in bits, that they can experiment with, and get a clarity as to how they would improve their exoskeleton when they move to manufacture. So we'll be offering these as separate packages, of course. And we've also been working on a new fitting system, which in the next coming weeks, we're going to be leaking some videos of this running so people get an idea. The fitting system will be, it is literally a camera-based system that will track all the body and actually present the ideal structures for an exoskeleton around the body. And also, we'll be also presenting our sensorless exoskeleton, which is a system that uses no sensors, but will allow the body to be moved while wearing an exoskeleton. And on top of that, as a package piece, we're also doing consulting. Now, the consulting at the moment, UK wise, as because it's all very new for us, it's only really been kicking off since the beginning of January. Has been received quite well. So it's quite exciting to be able to say that. But yeah, it's been received quite well. And so as a package as it goes, as a piece, with a lot going on, and you'll know this, we have a lot of grants that have gone in for at the same time. And yeah, so touch wood, this is on the right road.
Wow, that's exciting. So 2026 is your kind of breakout year.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay. How do you manage it all? Professor, private industry, standards development,
Yeah, it's try to get them all to overlap, to be honest. The and make everything complement everything else.
synergies.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay, I'm curious. You and I have nerded out on this topic a little bit in the past on the powered versus passive sort of classification and pros and cons from an engineering perspective.
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit of your personal philosophy on what sort of approaches are going to work in the real world?
Yeah, so I only laugh because the amount of times I've been into a lot of debates, even on standard side. So a lot of people tell me, the way, if you think of a hybrid system, a hybrid car, for example, classification of a hybrid car specifically says that the reason it's hybrid is it can switch to electric or it can switch to gasoline. And each method can be used to propel a system. So, in my mind, you will never have a hybrid exoskeleton. It would be a strange design, which I can't even comprehend how that would exist. Because if like the vehicle, we have a system that can change from a passive to an active, but it has to be the active drive system. I don't think that would ever work. So now we've simply got two types. We've got passive and we have active. Now, somebody said to me, well, what if you have a passive system? So let's say, for example, a large elastic, similar to like the Hero Wear system. Let's say you have a large elastic and then something moves the elastic to make it tighter or weaker. Is that active? See, for me, no, that's still not active. That's a passive system with an active aligner. So, so again, we still got two systems at this point, active and passive. I personally believe right now, when we're talking about in the workplace, I think the rush to move into putting an actuator on the body rather than looking at passive based methods, I think is madness. I don't think we should be doing such a thing. I think we should be trying to look at complementing the person's motion and aiding that motion to minimize potential risks around what's going on. I'm not saying that everything that's been done is completely wrong, but what I'm actually saying at this point is where we can actually use the design and actually use biomimicry in many ways. So actually looking at conforming designs that when they bend like ligament around the body. I think we should be using these to our advantage. Don't get me wrong. I do believe that actuators sit nicely in some positions. Say, for example, if you're doing a large overhead work, and you need to be able to hold something over a large principal amount of time. If it's just aiding the arms to minimize the strain, then fine. But the trouble is when you think of Otterbock, or if you think of, I always think of Otterbock's shoulder design with the linkages around the shoulders. I mean, even they've shown that really passive-based systems in the workplace work just as well, if better, if not any. When it comes to consumer, I do think the approach that Hypershell took. I do like the approach that Hypershell took. I think it's a nice, elegant solution for it. Don't get me wrong. There's always room for improvement, but that's in any design, is it not? So I believe, like the configuration of the automotive, if you're going to be set the vehicle in a racing condition, you change the tires, you change the engine itself, you change the seat, even the material that the body's made out of for that application.
Sure.
And I think when we think of military-based exoskeletons, we'll be talking, I think 90% passive with a 10% active alignment method on it. When we're talking about consumer, I think we'll be talking almost 100% active, because you look at the hypershell, the structure itself really remains on it being that way. But when we're talking about industrial manufacturing environments, I think like the military, you're going to be looking at more of a 60%, maybe 70% passive, with that missing piece as a 40% active system. And I think to the future, when we start to see the uses of hyperelastic materials or non-Newtonian materials stiffening in certain states, I think that's where the big steps are going to be. So it's exciting, and I've thought about this a lot.
Is that an active area of research for you?
For me, no. It's always been one of those where I believe that there's a lot of potential in it to be able to excite atoms in such a way, to get them to react in such a way. I mean, in around 10 years ago, I did do work on what in the UK we called it rubber armor, and we were looking at using a particular material where when you hit it, it stiffened and then would go back to its soft state when removed. So I mean, there's a few demonstrations of this type of armor that were done on, I've forgotten where it was, but I'm pretty sure it was done by DOD, where they were firing a lot of bows at the actual at the armor to show that it's stiffened in certain ways. So that's as far as that ever got with it.
Yeah, it's one of my beefs sometimes with when people pontificate on the future of exoskeleton technology, there's sometimes this assumption that batteries, motors, computers, it's all going to get lighter and smaller, and somehow that will enable Iron Man to come true. The basic physics of that just still don't make sense, even if you've somehow dramatically lightened those components.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, when you actually think about the overall design of it, I mean, I think it's madness. People will rush down the road to create these systems, stick huge motors on actuators onto the key joints, and you kind of think with a little bit of thought around it, with a little bit of biomimicry type approach, looking at ligament design to create conformable joints, you would just you wouldn't need any of it. You just have a single elegant solution. So yeah, I think it's madness. I'm with you 100%.
Interesting. It's an interesting time to be alive.
It
Uh,
really is.
um, so, you speak a lot about the sort of fit and conforming nature of these designs, or at least that these designs should consider that. Um, how did you get into, yeah, as a classically trained mechanical engineer, how did you build that bridge into thinking more about these human-centered, soft and squishy design aspects?
So what was interesting from my side is I spent so much time as a youngster. I'd always hoped to get involved in robotics. Always wished to get involved in robotics. And then as I grew up, I obviously saw Terminator. Everybody sees Terminator, and you kind of think that's how it should be, and you go, no, it shouldn't. So you go into it, and what had actually happened from my side is I started to make joints. And it's always been what's been fascinating thing for me is a joint. So, for example, if you think of an ankle, and I know everybody thinks a simple ankle, and the amount of times people say, "Oh, well, you just walk," and you go, "You really don't." The way that that foot rolls, you kind of go, "You really don't." So, when you're trying to make an ankle, and then if you're trying to go around that joint, the amount of time I'd seen people who they'd make an ankle and it'd have a hinge here and a hinge here, and it would be all over the place. Then one day, a student was sat in class and he said to me, I want to do a conformable 3D print part and a compliant 3D print part. And I'm like, I'd heard of compliancy and I'm thinking, okay, so he did this 3D printer compliant part, and all it was is it was a rubber band gun. Stupidest thing I've ever seen. But when I looked at it, I thought, so I got into compliance. And if you get a chance, you should really. And the idea of compliance is that you design the component to naturally buckle in certain ways, in certain positions that imitate the way that ligaments refine and change their design. And then I looked into this further. Turns out, in the early stages of space exploration, NASA were trying to propose an idea of where you could have one tool that the astronaut could have, and it would just fit everything. And the only way they could do it is if they could come up with a way for the material to bend itself to suit the shape. And that is where the first real applications of compliant mechanisms came from. So that then got me onto thinking, well, what if you took a compliant mechanism and then redesigned a knee? So you think of a knee, and now you look at some knee brace designs, the soft knee brace designs, they're almost like a compliant mechanism. But if you made that out of something like a hyperelastic rubber or something like that, you could actually control the way that that force is being absorbed. So you know what it's like. You get on one roll and then you spiral out of control onto another and onto another. So that's really where that came from.
Journey of obsessing over the details. Yeah, and this is where we're at as an industry.
It really
By
is.
and large, a lot of approaches have been tried. Most of them haven't worked in any, large scale.
It really is. One thing that I have learned in my 12 years of doing this, so many people are trying to produce Iron Man. And don't get me wrong, it's cool. You see it on screen, you think, that's so cool. I wish I could fly and all that. But what a lot of people miss is that they shouldn't be making exoskeletons to do every single job. They should be making exoskeletons to do a job. So, for example, if it's going to help the knees, let it just help the knees. Don't try and let it help your elbows and your arms. Focus it to do its job. Don't try and answer everything in one single hit. And that's the biggest issue that I'm finding at the moment is if it's going to help, say, for example, if it's going to help a firefighter with the BA kit on their back, just focus on doing that. Don't try and make it so they can kick through doors or kick through walls because it's just insane. I mean, people need to really be clear that the soft and squishy bit that's in between that exoskeleton is a really sophisticated thing, and you can't rush it and make it work for everything, or else you're going to injure the person that's in it. And that's not what we want.
Yeah, I think this is one big reason why I like the ASTM F48 group so much is most of the people engaged in the activity find what you just said to be self-evident, right? It's sort of inherently it's part of the culture to have a lot of specificity about the task, uh,
Yeah.
and define everything rigorously. You're right, especially as a young person, it's easy to look at a knee and every knee kinda looks the same and they all look like pin joints, and so why does it matter whether they're a soldier or a
Yeah.
whatever? Yeah, obsessing over those details and the difference between this and that winds up to be, really important. Uh,
Yeah.
and I wanted to touch you had mentioned the importance of teamwork in all of this, and
Hmm.
I think that's a key aspect, at the confluence of several different perspectives. That's where the real magic happens for me, at least in my experience. I don't know,
100%. Yeah.
what's your philosophy? Can you
So, when it comes to, yeah, when it comes to it, I mean, I know they say a problem shared, but it's bigger than that. The trouble is you cannot absorb everything. There's nothing wrong with trying to appreciate what the job is that somebody else does. But trying to be an expert at what somebody else does, you become the master of of everything, but the knower of nothing. And the real benefit is with it is that people bring passion to what they love. If you get people who love, let's say, for example, you have some. I've worked with somebody who loved knees and ankles. His expertise was because, as a youngster, he was going to be a football player, and he actually had his ankle shattered, so he ended up with an ankle replacement. And now is like a UK renowned ankle expert. But when you have people in the room who kind of go, "This is what an ankle does. Why not do this, this, and this?" It's not just making it that's a pleasure. It's also the discussion that's a pleasure. It's the excitement of thinking you're onto something new and motivating moving forwards. And that momentum in the right group, the right people, I think really drives what we do. As a friend of mine once said, the term company means a group of people. So surely to have a good company means that you must have a good group of people.
That's great. I was the type of engineer, in the beginning who thought I could do it all. And
Yeah, me too.
really tried until I had a breakdown. Um, so it's good. It's good. I hope you're teaching your students these lessons to help them avoid learning it the hard way.
Well, yeah. Because when you first, you know what it's like. You first come in and you can, as a friend of mine says, you're going to cure cancer, but then you realize you're just about getting to the point of wiping your nose because there's just so much to be done. But what's important is that there's nothing wrong with that. To really solve the bigger problems, everybody has to work closer together. And that's why I really love the ASTM environment. Because as much as much as we get onto calls and we get onto hard debates and discussions, and I tend to be that guy on calls where I kind of go, "That's great, but," uh, but that's what the great thing is that you can get in there and everybody's passionate about what you do, and it really drives you forward as well as them just as much.
Hmm. So do you spend a lot of time more with like prototype exoskeletons of your own or fielding and evaluating commercially available exos?
It's really interesting. Around say 12 months ago, I'd have said just prototyping new types of exoskeletons. As now, given my experience on what we do on 48, and given the certification spearheading and some of the other stuff that I'm doing with the other manufacturer, it's now becoming a bit of both. And don't get me wrong, Josh, if all the chips fall at the right time, we are probably going to have to start hiring as quickly as possible.
That's great.
Yeah, I know, I know. You know, you kind of go, that's a great place to be, but it's just making sure they fall in the right place. So yeah, it's been a mix of the two at the minute, an absolute mix of the two.
I think it's great. It's highly educational to do both, and I feel like you can't really design something new, well, not very effectively, without first understanding what the current options exist.
Yeah,
And by understanding, I mean like put your hands on it, use it.
yeah. Really get a feel of what it does and how it does it.
Yeah,
I mean, friend, a real good set of friends I've been able to remain constant in touch with, just because of people we know, is people at NIST. People at NIST have been very, very good. So obviously they can't tell you everything, but the bits they can tell you, you ask them about what some of the issues they find on key things, and they're really informative. And they've been fab, really, really good on understanding a few things. And luckily, I was invited out there a couple of times. So I have been out to NIST a couple of times, which was an amazing, fantastic experience, which if you haven't done already, Josh, you should definitely get out there.
I think I was there in the formative stages before ASTM was formed, before F48 was formed. I think some of those early meetings were at NIST. We're talking 2017.
Yeah, yeah, I imagine. As
Yeah.
now there's some dedicated areas where they run tests looking at the ability and people's mobility in exos. And yeah, it's fascinating, fascinating.
Okay.
Really, really cool. So they're very informative on the key things. And as I said, where they can comment, they are so, so good to speak to.
Hmm. Has developing relationships with the end users themselves been important, like the workers or first responders or soldiers?
So while I was in the position of trying to understand whether the company was well worth setting up or not, I was funded by a UKRI initiative called iCure.
Ah,
And I traveled right across the world. I went to Prague, Slovenia, DC, California, Dubai. I traveled all over looking at people who use them, the benefits of using them, people who'd be interested in them. And yeah, some really big eye-opening moments for me. DC, for example, I got clearance to be at a DoD event, which I'm not I'm not a US resident, so it was a real compliment to be in that position. Got into this discussion, and one of my favorite things that they echoed, as well as the people in Slovenia, was I spoke to a guy in Slovenia, and he was a mountain special forces. And I said to him, look, I'm making exoskeletons. I'm looking to complement you guys in motion. Would you wear this? And he said to me, my ability to freely move and to freely move around without being injured um, is my fitness. And that cognitively makes me feel sound, makes me feel safe. And he said, if you're going to tell me to put that on, I cognitively, even though I will be able to move, but I cognitively don't feel as secure. He actually said to me, so I wouldn't want to wear it because I will now become susceptible to injury and I will compromise myself as the rest of my team. And you know, when you sit there and go, oh, hell, this means we're doing something completely wrong.
because the device
Then,
is unfamiliar or
yeah.
unnatural, I guess.
And he believes that he would have to train himself so much to become familiarized by that device that it would affect his ability to move like he could do normally because he would be changing his way he moved. And it was quite interesting to hear his take. However, to the front of him was a female. She must have been 5'8". She was about 70 pounds at best. Fully loaded. She was 100 pounds, 110. That's what she told me. And she said, look, if I'm a combat medic, she said, when I'm first on the field, we're told is that we're the first people that the enemy's going to try and take out. She said, if you can help me get people like him, so he was a big guy, off the field, I would say, where do I sign? And then I went to DOD, and at this event, they echoed the same thing. Then came back to the UK, and whilst I was in the UK, the 54% of UK soldiers who are in the medical side are female. The second highest thing that's discharged through medical injury is females in the UK Army. So what we've got is a real point of attack for where these things need to be approached. So it's interesting where it's going.
Hmm. I've heard similar perspective from my contacts in military service that this problem of moving people off the battlefield is
Yeah,
a huge
emergency
one.
evac.
Yeah, yeah, an opportunity for exoskeletons and other kinds of technology solutions.
100%, yeah. So when I spoke to a lot of people who were interested in wearing them, they tended to be workers in manufacturing because of the heavy loading they were doing, or they were combat medics. They were not boots on the ground. They were not your Iron Man scenarios. They were your medicals, and they were those who needed to quickly react. And the other people who have a lot of interest, but I still think need a lot more work on it, is firefighters.
Hmm.
Just because temperatures, looking at the way that the system reacts, you need to be sure that thing is not going down when they're wearing it in a fire.
Yeah, firefighters wear a ton of gear, heavy, and they, I mean, they deal with some incredibly dangerous musculoskeletal situations, often
Hmm.
with low visibility.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like bomb disposal experts. I mean, we saw a demonstration at one of the Exo Games of somebody wearing a bomb disposal equipment, and when you actually hold the suit, it weighs. I can't remember how much. I just remember how much it weighed, and it was so heavy. So obviously, they're now looking at trying to put something like that into a bomb disposal suit. And I know some companies have had some good success with it. But yeah, again, it's that extra kit.
Do the manufacturers of this kit, are they generally UK based in your experience?
So the bomb disposal experts and the helmet experts who build all these, they were Canadian based.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um,
I've been thinking a lot about how, as an industry, we can try to connect the dots between the manufacturers of these traditional products and the experts in exoskeleton technology. That's a real partnership that we need
mhm.
more of.
Yeah. Because that's really where you need to approach. The trouble is if you, like myself, when I did the IQ process, if I tried to just interview exoskeleton manufacturers, all they ever say is our product is the best, and you go, that's great, but what does it do? So until you actually speak to the ones who are using it and say, I hate them all, that's only till then that you get some real feedback of what's going on. So yeah, speaking to the end users is preferred in every single case, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and I have the feeling that, focusing on these end user groups, which are sort of already overburdened by gear, may be a good place to focus, because they're already wearing all this stuff, and you're integrating a technology that could perhaps make it easier to bear that gear, that weight,
Yeah.
that restriction. Whereas, trying to solve a problem for I don't know, a runner wearing nothing but a pair of shorts and some thin shoes, that just seems like such a higher burden of design.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the same mindset of that. If you're making exoskeleton for championship runners, why? They're a championship runner, you know? It just seems insane. But so yeah, it's focusing the efforts in the right places, I would say. Always about that. I mean, an interesting one that I was told, and this is recent, somebody was saying to me that there was a study done looking at children, I think it was in the 90s, looking at children with their backpacks. And there was an interesting study done that which suggested that some backpacks were actually putting a lot of pressure on the lower back.
Yes.
And you do kind of look and go, well, what has been done there? Because there's a lot of opportunity, not to put exos all over kids, but to put it into the backpack where they put it on, and then there's something inside there as well. It's an interesting area.
Uh, yeah, I've thought.
Yeah,
I've actually had people approach me with wacky backpack
yeah,
concept. Super cool. I mean, there is so much possibility here. We're just scratching the surface with exoskeleton
that's very
technology.
true. Very true.
We need to bring more resources to the problem. I wanted to ask you about UKRI actually. I've been trying to learn more about the UK based funding programs. Do you see that landscape of who's funding development evolving in any interesting ways?
Yeah, so I don't think I get myself in trouble by talking like this, but when we did the UKRI cure process, there's several stepping stones that you had to do. So we went through all four of them, and it was if anybody's listening to this who's interested, it's a well worth experience. It's absolutely phenomenal. Really helps you spell out where you're going. Now, originally, you got to the end of one of them. You got to the last one, and then there was the opportunity to apply for startup funding. This was coming out of UKRI, and UKRI literally pulled that funding and held that up completely. So it's indefinitely stopped. Not to say the iCure is not worth doing, because it extremely is, but it was a real shock. It was a shock to all of us that that had happened. And the people who ran IQ were phenomenal, because they pulled all different other options as well together of how we are going to continue. And when I was able to sit back a little bit and let the dust settle from what had happened, we then started to see demographics changing on the idea of that it's no longer research is no longer just the publication that's going to go on the shelf. What they're actually now looking for and what they're actually now looking to provide is fine. You produce that research paper. We're super happy about that. But what is it for? What is the outcome? So the military based applications, so your likes of DASA, for example, which is Defense Accelerator Fund, what they ask for is they ask for something to be produced, but they want to know what is it that they're getting for their funds. They say you can produce a technical report, that's great, but they want to see something that comes out, and that's the priorities. Because originally for us in the UK, it wasn't like that. You could just apply for funds, see if something worked, and then if it didn't work, it didn't work. As now it's about what are you getting, how are you going to produce it, and then what's the next phases of what you're going to produce from it. And that's the real attitude that's starting to now appear in UKRI as well. With UKRI, what they're now talking about is business growth, really awarding people who are trying to make the step into business, not stepping entirely away from academia, because I don't want to like doom and gloom academia at all. What I'm trying to say is those who have gone through the process and now having a go at starting the companies, there's so much funding out there to support people moving forwards. And that's where it's really sitting, and that's how it's working. So you need an academic strand, and you also need a business strand to be able to be successful in them.
It may just be my own perspective, but similar things are happening in the US, and maybe we're at a paradigm shift for the whole academic research
Yeah.
uh, uh, field that research now really does need to be more applied. What what
Yes.
what is the economic justification for this research? Why does our economy need your research?
Exactly.
That seems to
So,
be a bigger and bigger question.
well, we now sit in a present position where AI has now been able to remove the need for it to be an academic research paper that's publicized. What it's now getting to the point is a lot of people saying, "You've got AI, you can produce this paper. Why can you not produce this paper and produce me a prototype?"
Right.
And it's an interesting question. It's hard, don't get me wrong, you and me both know it's not that easy, but that's where these pushes are coming from, of where you're writing a lot of people, and I've seen them, a lot of people are using AI to actually aid them in the publication side.
Sure.
And now it's at the point of where is it going? And I do quite like, as much as hate, but I do quite like the idea of where this is going, because it's pushing us to strive to innovate, and it's a really really exciting time to be alive, to be honest.
Yeah. I find this is a recurring theme on this podcast, actually. I guess it just happened naturally that a lot of us sit at this crossroads between academia and industrial application. I think we should celebrate that we all sit at these crossroads, because now the world needs more people like us that can understand both sides of the value of both. Um,
It's funny though, isn't it? Until you've actually seen it,
yeah,
you don't appreciate it. You just don't. I didn't appreciate it. I also didn't appreciate the idea of that. Yes, we can build these things, and it's great to build them. We all love to build them, but that's only the small part of actually getting it out to the rest of the world. There's
right.
so much that goes on. So when you think of a marketing team, for example, at the time I used to think, what do these people do? As now it's kind of like, wow, these people wave their magic wand to do what they do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, within a lot of businesses, the sales and marketing and business
Exactly.
development department is bigger than the technical team.
And now
Uh,
it makes sense.
yeah, there's very valid reason for that. And even just looking at the building of the EXO or whatever the product is, there's aspects of building that academic labs are very good at, and there's other types of building that companies are better at.
Yeah.
Ideally, there's collaboration there, to have a win-win.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, all right, cool. Well, Matt, this has been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, no. Thank
Any
you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Just quickly, we only have a minute. I wanted to see if you have any parting words of wisdom. I'm thinking particularly for the younger folks in this audience.
Yeah.
Uh,
100%.
yeah,
All
yeah,
I would all I would say is experts are experts. So always ask questions because they don't know everything.
that's great. I love it when I get stumper questions from young people. Those are fun moments.
They are the best, aren't they?
All right. Thanks so much, Matt. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.